Oh, hi, it's Lisa. So I've been thinking about the apocalypse lately and how, in a post apocalyptic situation, Nick is really the person you want around because he always has his Leatherman with him. And he can build stuff and he can, like, when he was 13, his parents were like, so do you think that you could replace the garbage disposal? And he was like, I'm 13 and I don't know really much of anything about plumbing, but I can try. Um, so there's all this stuff he can do, which I personally think is really cool. Yeah. Whereas I'm not so much the person you want around, because while I'm good in an emergency and I feel like I could like get us to shelter or something, then if I had an asthma attack, for example, the world has ended, so where are you going to get inhalers? And then, then I'd get depressed because eventually my antidepressants would run out. So then I'd sit around and cry. So this all started with this increase in my thyroid medication. And so I got in touch with my friend Jessica, who knows things. If I need to know a thing, she's the person. She or Nick. Like, they always know things. Like, I remember 1776 because I remember in 1976, we were in the U.S. that summer, and there was this huge bicentennial celebration. But otherwise, like, I don't know presidents. I don't remember when the Civil War was. But Nick knows all of these things. Whereas, like, I remember what dress I was wearing one particular night in high school when something important happened. And I don't remember facts so much. I think they might really interest me at the time, and then they're kind of gone by. But anyway, so this started with this increase in medication, and I got in touch with Jessica, who, sort of explained the whys of this, and there are a couple different kinds, and she kind of explained chemically what happens, which I found interesting, but I didn't go, like, I never really go looking, like, I also don't know why I was so bothered, because typically I'm pretty cavalier about medication. Like, I don't want to be in pain, so, my friends who, like, are really cautious about Advil and Tylenol, I can't quite relate to. I mean, I don't blame them, but I'm just like, why pain? Take. And then I took that Ambien from a stranger on a plane, but it was an overnight flight. I mean, I wasn't really thinking, is the thing. Like, he wasn't really a stranger because we'd been chatting for about 20 minutes or so. And he was kind of excited. I didn't have a sleeping pill. He had this new prescription. He was like, look, this is awesome. And I was like, oh, that is awesome. And then he handed me one, and I was like, this is just great. In retrospect, I mean, it's not something I would want my daughter doing, and I wouldn't do it again. It just, in the moment didn't seem so crazy. So yes, I'm more cavalier about prescription medication, seemingly no matter whose prescription it is. Although I'm not actually interested in recreational drug use. Like, like I had Vicodin, I think. Is that what oxycodone is? OxyContin? I don't know. One of those after my C-section, and it just made me, I'd had it also when I hurt my back, and it just made me feel crazy. I really didn't like it. And so I had this whole bottle, and I was like, what do I do with these? And this friend of mine was like, those have really good street value. Like, you could sell those for like $5 a pill or something. And I was like, well, if $5, that would be like shoes and an outfit or something. So I told Nick, I was like, hey, I've got some great news. Like, listen to this. Like, I don't have to worry about like how to dispose of these. And I could, make some money too. And he was like, yeah, if you want to be a drug dealer and go to jail. And I was so like, I'm not a drug dealer. These are my friends. Well, friend of friends. And he was like, if you're selling drugs, you're a drug dealer. And it's illegal. And I was like, oh, God, you make a really good point. So then we flushed them, and then I was kind of, you think about all this stuff because, the alligators in the Everglades with their tiny little penises, well, I don't know how small they are, but, they're much smaller than their forebears because of all the estrogen in the water, and apparently we're all drinking some estrogen because of, all these birth control. Well, I don't need to talk about urine, but anyway, I was just thinking, this cannot be good for anybody, but what are you going to do? I can't sell it, and I'm, not going to use it, and I don't want it around in case somebody breaks in. Not, you know, my another one of my things lately is White Walkers, because if you don't watch Game of Thrones, they're like zombies, but like frozen zombies on steroids. So they're not just like staggering around and they'll like stagger after you and eat your head. Just if you happen to be there, they're like after you, and they have swords, and they're fast, and they're terrifying. Like seriously, if I think about them at night, I get really worried, because we have bars on the back door and windows, but not on the front, and they would just like bash those in, and then they would kill us, and then we would wake up with our bright blue eyes, and then we would be White Walkers, and it would just be practically the worst thing I can imagine. Anyway, I think my big message is don't take drugs from strangers on planes. Yeah, and zombies are bad.